All right, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another outstanding episode of Cliff's Notes. Hope you had a wonderful Thanksgiving holiday, and man, do we have a treat for you today. You're going to meet the good witch Noel coming up right after this on Cliff's Notes.
Real estate agents, are you struggling with the day-to-day grind, dialing for dollars, putting in hours of floor time with little to show for it? Are you looking for tips, tricks, and tactics to accelerate your career as an agent that will have you closing more homes, working with more clients, and earning more money than ever before? Hi, my name's Cliff Freeman, and I've spent the past 2 decades of my real estate career running one of the top brokerages in DFW and personally coaching over 1,000 high-performing real estate professionals across North America. I created this podcast to share the strategies and tactics you need to explode your real estate business. I guarantee it.
Now, guarantees we always have every episode of Cliff's Notes, but we don't always have a witch on the show. But you're going to find out why here right now. Let's go ahead. C3, can we bring on Noel?
Let's bring her in.
This young lady, we had the pleasure of having lunch with her before the show, and I've met her once before. But ladies and gentlemen, you're about to have your mind blown by the knowledge and the expertise that she's going to lay on you today. There are so many just critical things that, for example, I don't know about you, but did you get an owner's manual when you were born to your brain? Anybody? No?
Not I.
No?
No.
Did they teach you anything in school about that? How to manage yourself in your head and all that sort of thing? And no? But,
No.
That's one of the key things that differentiates. If you look at some of the top performers in the world, we talk about golf all the time. What's the difference? It's millimeters, right? It's that, we call it the flat stick, the putter. Everybody can hit the ball well, right? But it's the people that go and really understand how to manage their head, the 6 inches between their ears, right, that counts. So without further ado, shall we?
Here we are, Miss Noel, the
Noel,
good witch.
the good witch. All right, and now you're going to find out what this witch is all about, right?
Yes.
So Noel, welcome to the show. First of all, I'm
Thank
super
you.
stoked to have you here, and C3 and I had a wonderful time with you at lunch, learned so much. And one of the things we learned is that not all witches are bad, and we know that Glenda the good witch, we know about her.
Yes.
But I think you take this whole definition of a witch to another level. Give us a
Yes.
little insight into what is a witch today.
Sure. So, and it's a term that I know when people hear it, they get this, it's like this inner right? Because we've been programmed throughout our lives to believe witches are bad or evil or they're concocting potions. And sure, we have that in Hollywood. But a witch is a woman in total control of herself, meaning a woman who can hold space for both her intellect and her emotion at the same time. We get these stereotypes of women being so emotional and out of control. And a lot of it is trauma response. A lot of it is not ever having the necessary tools to learn how to navigate them. Because think about it, and you're right, you mentioned school. It's all logic-based, left brain-based. There's a right answer, there's a wrong answer. 1 + 1 is 2. You're navigating that through your entire life. So you're overdeveloping that left brain, which is keeping you out of the right brain, which is intuition and feeling. And so when you're not able to really find that balance, things can feel out of control. And so a witch is a woman in total control of herself. I work with women to help them heal a lot of those deep wounds. And reprogramming is one of my specialties.
Reprogramming. Okay, so casting spells on people is not part of your bag of tricks then, right?
Well, you could call it a spell casting of some kind, but it's a spell casting that you agree to, that you want.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, so the reprogramming and gosh, this is one of my favorite. As I've progressed through, every kind of class you could take to, years of business experience and stuff. What I've really been able to narrow it down to is people perform best when they're aligned, not just with each other, but internally, right?
Yes.
And you've sought outside of what I call traditional medicine and spirituality here in this country to really explore that whole notion and concept of being in alignment. Can you talk a little bit about what your work has uncovered and where you really have found answers to this whole question about alignment?
Sure. Yeah. And alignment, I love that word because to me, in the way that I coach, alignment means that your inner world, meaning who you are and your authenticity and your truth, is reflected in your outer world. And a lot of times for people that is really very misaligned, and it happens when you know you're not in the right place or the right career or the right relationship for you, right? But we try to push it because maybe on paper or on logic it looks good, it matches up, but there's still something that's just off, misaligned. And misalignment, the ways to even notice that it's happening is to check your vibe, your vibration, where you resonating in your emotions for a lot of the time. So exhaustion is one, because a lot of times when we're in misalignment, it's like we're trying to force something that doesn't fit. And so you're draining a lot of energy, you're losing a lot of energy. And then that navigates a lot of times into depression, into shame cycles, anxiety, resentments, these very low vibrating emotions that pull us down and they make us exhausted. It's like after you have a big, outburst or depression spell, it's like people are so tired. Why is your body so tired? Because you're resonating in that low vibrating place. Out of alignment.
Is it kind of like when you get into a room with somebody who you want to take a shower after you've been in there and you just feel all beat up, even though you didn't even come in contact with them? What's this theory about vibration and in a field around you? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so, and this is basic science, and one of the things that I really seek to do is to find the intersections of science and spirituality. So everything is energy. And this isn't something that is up for discussion or dispute, right? Everything is energy, and energy holds a charge. And so we know we've got negative energy, we've got positive energy. Well, our emotions are very similar in how they vibrate in those charges, right? So shame, guilt, resentment, lower vibrating emotions, lower energy emotions, right? Love, abundance, manifestation, gratitude, openness, willingness, joy, playfulness, creativity. All of those are your top vibrating emotions. When you're in, you feel like your best self. That's why I always say, love is really the essence of who we are, because when we're vibrating in it, when we're experiencing it, when we're in love, we have all this energy. Life is great. We feel on top of the world. Things are manifesting, right? You've just tapped into that higher frequency. So when we take this understanding that everything is energy and you are a vibrational being, everything about you is energy and you hold a charge. And the way I always explain to clients is, if you went into a coffee shop, and we'll just use this example, and you saw someone who was like pissed off and angry and sitting there and like all like, oh, how am I going to do this? Or on the phone yelling. And then you see somebody just like sitting there peacefully and reading their book. Who are you more drawn to? When you first see it, your body will tell you. It's like this instant resistance. When you see this person in all of this chaos, energy, or anger, you go, ooh, right? I've even seen people fighting, and I've watched humans how they'll just gear their walk farther around just to avoid that conflict, right? So it's this idea of recognizing that everything is energy, including you. And when you have a vibration, you get to, and this is the witch, you get to control your energy. Do you want to vibrate in a high vibrating emotion or a low vibrating emotion? And it takes a lot of time to get there, obviously, because you have to even become aware that you have the choice. But you have to open up to the perspective that in any given situation in life, like you're watching a play, you can see it from this seat or you can see it from this seat. The play is still happening, but you get to choose what perspective you take.
So it's a choice, really, a conscious choice of how you look at things.
And that's the mindfulness, the awareness. Yes.
Even though some people probably have to struggle with that choice because of the way maybe they were raised.
Yes. Yeah, it's all programming. It's just this programming that you have to, even this idea of that you don't have a choice, that you're in this victim's place, like, oh, this happened to me and so I'm stuck here, right? And a lot of it, I have been there. I have lived there for years and years and years. And so this is how I know it's possible to shift, is that when we choose a victim state, we've lost all our power to make any change. to make any progress for your own life. And so coming out of that is recognizing, like, first, I have to heal within myself these self-hate wounds that have come from a lot of our programming of shame through how we've been raised, how we've been disciplined, how we've been punished, in religion, how we, are called sinners, and we have that identity with us, this very sense that we're bad. And so we have to be able to heal that in order to show up in your authenticity, to show up in love, to be able to show up as your true self. That has to be healed first.
Wow, this is such a rich conversation because you've said a lot of words, and I hope we haven't lost anybody here. But if you've studied this at all, the terminology. Let's begin with authenticity.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about what authenticity means and why it's important.
Sure. So the way that I describe it, authenticity is that original soul programming, like who you really are, what you came here to live and experience, what that resonant feeling is. I almost say it's like when you try on, and this is for women, but men too, I'm sure. I don't know. I've never tried on a suit, but when you try on a suit or I try on a dress, I might put on 5 different dresses, and then there'll be one that I'm like, that's it. That's the one. We have that similar resonance with people, with experiences, with careers, with jobs. And in that moment, when we can be so present and understand that feeling in that moment, that's our intuition guiding us and leading us towards that authentic soul code, what we came here to be and do. And when we think about it, when we follow those things, life is great. We feel on top of the world. Everything is going really well. When we're in misalignment or inauthentic is when we have taken on this programmed belief system, either of our society or religion or our parents or our friends, but it's not really ours. And so we try to live it. Oh, I checked all these boxes. I did all these things. This person looks so good on paper. Why am I not feeling it? I have to do this. I have to force this to work, And so many of us find ourselves in those situations throughout our lives, and they're probably some of the lowest places that we've been because it has been so out of alignment. The longer you exist in them, the worse it gets because that authentic self will never stop. Loves you so much, it will never stop trying to get your attention to live that life.
Yeah, and in your life, your journey along the way to where you are now, an expert in this field, this was not just some academic exploration exercise, right?
No.
You were actually yourself void, filling a need, and had experienced a belief system that limited you as a human being. And so you were actually pursuing this to help yourself. Can you talk to the audience a little bit about what led up to this sort of self-discovery, if you don't mind?
Yeah, so, I think a lot of us who are doing any kind of self-awareness work, you start to come to the realization that there are likely traumas in your life. I had a lot. Started with, being born into an alcoholic home and the abuse in that home. I was sexually assaulted twice in my early 20s. Again, earlier when I was 13 by a friend of my father. My brother died when I was 13 of a heroin overdose. Been through divorces, abusive relationships. It's like over time, you get to the point, and this is something that I don't think everybody talks about, but when you're in such misalignment, when you're in situations that are confirming this false belief that you're bad, which abuse does, because that's how you make sense of it. Well, I must be bad. That's why this bad thing is happening to me. That's all our baby brains at the time can really understand, right? But until we check that belief, it runs on its own. And so we're adults now with this belief that we're bad, when really you take this step back and you're like, oh my God, I was a kid. Why am I hating myself so much? But I got into such a deep hatred. I was working for the Catholic Church. I have 2 degrees in theology. I came out as gay while I was working for the Catholic Church. That didn't go over really well, as we can all imagine. And so it was like one thing after the next, after the next, after the next. And you get to a point in your life, and I think a lot of us have maybe probably been there, but you start to question, why am I here if this hurts so bad? Why would I even choose to continue on in this? Why can't, the pain is so intense, and if it's not the memories during the day, it's the nightmares at night. You don't ever get a break, you know? And so when you've been a product of trauma and abuse for so long, and then you're like putting yourself in situations to keep on hurting yourself because you're in that cycle of, I'm bad, I deserve punishment, so now I'm going to stay in situations that keep on hurting me. Eventually that misalignment is your soul is going to try so hard to get your attention, you know? And that's really what it came down to for me. I was hospitalized, and I remember being in there and thinking, like, is this going to be my life? Am I going to continue on these cycles of depression and hating myself and wishing I were dead and all of these things, or am I going to do something different with my life? And it was actually a doctor who had said to me, he's like, you know, there's nothing wrong with you. And it was the first time somebody had even put that idea in my head. Why did I even think something was wrong with me? Maybe it wasn't wrong with me. Maybe I was just in a belief system that didn't align with me. You know, and so then I had to start that quest to, well, if this belief system doesn't align with me, now try that after 2 degrees in theology, working for the church for 10 years, and then coming to this point of like, oh my gosh, what do I believe? Who am I? What do I do? But knowing that if I didn't take the chance to seek out different ideas or perspectives, or allow myself to experience and explore to find out who I really am, that I was going to die anyway. And so I had nothing to lose at that point. And I did. And I remember the first time I meditated, they had us meditate, and I got up and left, and I was like, this is bullshit. I was like, this isn't going to work. I was so resistant. I was so religious and so rigid and in my perspective at the time. But then I did this whole deep dive into opening up into spirituality, meditation, tuning into who I really am. I left the things that were not aligned with me. I left my marriage. I left the church. I left the state. I came down to Texas. And I really did some incredible deep healing work. And now all I want to do is offer that for women, because I know what it's like to be in that utterly dark place, and now what it is to be on the contrasting side of that. And I wouldn't give up any of it at this point in my life, knowing that this is where it got me. Even the hardest, most difficult moments, wouldn't give it up.
Okay. So you mentioned religious, which, I mean, obviously the Catholic Church that's a very religious organization. And then you mentioned spirituality. What's the difference?
It's a great question. So there is a big difference between religion and spirituality. Can they coexist? Yes. Do they usually? No. Okay. Religion is a set of rules. It's an institution. It has like, these are the things that you believe and follow in order to be a part of this group. That's religion. Belief. Spirituality is experience. Spirituality is, how often in my life am I experiencing love, joy, unity, playfulness, creativity, inner peace? How many times, feeling of service, not feeling used, or I have to, or I'm obligated to, but this sense of, I'm so full that all I have is overflowing and I want to give. How often do we experience that, right? Can religion lead you to that? Sure, it can. Generally, because of the shame-based belief systems rooted in them to maintain membership and, conformity, which really exists in all of our systems, even our parenting systems. Conformity, it's like, shame, you're bad, so that you conform. Because if you believe you're bad, if you have that deep belief you're bad, you'll never trust your own thoughts. You'll never trust your own feelings. You'll always second guess yourself. You'll always live in doubt. So what I did was I literally released and basically detached from all of those systems that had told me what I should be, how I should look, how I should act, all of those shoulds. And I always say, if you find yourself shoulding on yourself, stop. Because it's a shame-based connection. And
Yes.
Every time you hear it, my clients say, they're like, I hear your voice all the time. Whenever they say should, they're like, oh, why do I think I should? Who's telling me I should? Is this really what I want to do? Is this really an expression of me authentically? So that's kind of the way that I help people navigate. And I do program interrupts for clients. So, they'll be talking just like we're talking, but I'll stop them at a place that I know is the self-hatred or the self-wounding or the resentment, and we shine a light on it. So we insert pretty much like a new code in the program. It might glitch for a while. They're like, sometimes I feel like I'm doing so good, and then sometimes I feel like I'm going back. I'm like, you're in a momentum shift is what's happening. The program is starting to shift and change. If you put enough new codes in that program, the old one will stop running.
Yeah. So obviously, our belief systems are shaped by our parents, by church, by school, the institutions. Where do the institutions fail in helping us develop a belief system?
I don't know if they fail as much as they do their job in serving to give us a contrasting experience to help us realize what we actually want out of life. That's what I believe. And that's how I've worked around so much of the resentment and the anger is, no, if I hadn't experienced this limiting, very rule-abiding, constricting, inauthentic life experience, then I would never know what it's like to live this way. It's like you can't know hot without cold, up without down, left without right. The only reason we know one is because we exist in a universe of contrast. So you have to experience one to know the other. And so in that way, I'm grateful. It's how I even worked on a lot of resentments with my parents, like growing up in a home where, you felt a lot of emotional abuse, physical abuse. Like you just get to this point that you're like, I love my parents. I want to love them. How can I get to this place of releasing this resentment that I've held? And the reality is that I believe that we have an extremely important soul contract in that they lived lives that allowed me to choose a different one. They lived lives that put them in places of feeling so sad or depressed or angry that they were inflicting that on themselves, each other, other people. But it was like they chose to live in that place to help me choose something different. And for that, I love them beyond. I mean, it's like it opened up this place for me that, and you can't do it until you heal yourself. Like there was no way I would be able to give them that if I hadn't done that deep healing work. But we even talked earlier at lunch, it's this whole idea that people don't have to change for you to have a different experience or a different relationship with them. Only one variable has to change, and that can be you.
Yeah, it's like Frankel's, man's search for meaning. I mean, it is without having, if you're on the merry-go-round, it's the same, life is the same all the time, right? We always say it's better to be on the roller coaster than it is to be on the merry-go-round.
Yet everybody doesn't want change. They hate, I hate change, I resist change, except that change, if nothing changed, you'd be so pissed off at life. You'd be like, man, if I had to live the same thing, there's Groundhog's Day. That's a movie about it, right? If I had to live the same thing over and over and over again, automatically we're like, no. But then things have to change. No.
Yeah.
Well,
why do you think people are so resistant to change?
Great question. Because it deals with the unknown. Because we have been conditioned to believe, because of negative experiences that we've had, and especially living in misalignment for so long, that the unknown is going to be bad. We think that the next job, it's going to suck like the one I have, or however we tell ourselves, right? The next relationship, it's going to be just like the last one. All this stuff we bring in and carry through, which is why we don't like change. But I live for change. I love it. I'm like, every time I wake up, I'm like, what's going to happen today? And if we go in with that vibration of even the things that are uncomfortable, if we can get out of this dualistic belief of good and bad, it's just uncomfortable. This is the situation that's giving me an opportunity to show up different, to learn something new, to practice a new perspective, to practice a new behavior, see if I like it better, see if it resonates better, see if it keeps my energy up. Why would I be so resistant to it, right? And it gets better and better as I go. I spent a couple weeks with an insurance company, letting it get me real low to the point that I finally was like, you know what? I'm just paying it myself. Why am I doing this? I am not going to put any more of my energy into that. And I think if we can do that in life, realize if something is sucking your energy, if something that you're in is putting you in this negative space, you can walk away.
Right.
You can make a different choice. Change is on your side. It's
Right.
always happening.
You're not stuck.
No.
Is what you're saying.
No,
So-
you are never stuck. If anything, you're in a pause. And I always say, like, transformation happens in pause. Like, if you think about a caterpillar turning
True.
into a butterfly, right?
Cocoon, yeah.
A cocoon. It is a long pause. We don't see it. We don't understand it. But eventually, that shake will happen, and out comes a completely transformed piece of matter. Something that once crawled on its belly is now flying. And you don't think that's possible for you? You're part of creation too. We forget that because we've disconnected so much from it. But we cycle in the same way. We release, we grow, we flourish in the same way as the seasons. It's happening all the time, all around us.
Wow.
Yeah, that's what I call magic.
You know, I want to just kind of for a minute talk about maybe some specific things that we're dealing with as our, you know, we're really in real estate, and that's kind of what we do, and a lot of our audience's members are in real estate, and you know, this is a really challenging time for people, and there's folks who made really good money last year who aren't going to have a lot under the tree this year. And some of them are probably in a really bad state of mind right now. What advice do you have for people who are going through that cycle in life where it just, hope is fleeting right now? What can you share with them?
Couple things, and I think maybe something that you wouldn't expect, but the first is to not resist it, to allow it. Things are changing. They are. Things are shifting. Things might look a little bit different this year, and that's okay. Different doesn't mean bad or worse. It just means different. So can I open up to this idea that maybe if I quit the comparison to something else and just let it be in the present what it is, and be open to the dynamics of the magic that can happen when things are focused differently. You know, but that's the thing too, right? Remembering that if I choose to exist in this hopelessness, if I choose to allow it to drain my energy, if you could watch this on a screen, if you watched yourself interacting with your family, if you watched yourself interacting at your work, if you could see what it does and how it, you know, affects not just you, but other people around you. That's why I say if we can work on this deeper sense of healing and acceptance within ourselves, that's what's going to shift the world dynamic. I know a lot of stuff with the, you know, money, and it has been like a huge thing. And one of the ways that I have navigated it personally for myself is when I go to look at the stock market, right, which we'll do, and we'll look and no, okay. I'm going to just slow that down. I'm going to pause. Is my favorite word, pause. And then what I do is I actually go through, and if you know, on your phone, you can check to see like, oh, this was the day, the week, the month, the year, the 10 years, the whole entire stock market exchange. And if you look at the entirety of it, where it started and where we are today, we are still like, whoa, it gives you this perspective of like, wow, look at us up there. What are we so worried about, right? But if we look at it as the perspective of a day, yeah, then it's very, very drastic. And I say, let's use that same example with our lives. You know, think about, you know, a week ago, 3 months ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago. Where you are now is probably still drastically, incredibly more abundant than where you were then. Even if right now, in this very small moment, there's a little bit of a struggle. It's that idea of, okay, I know that for me to manifest, for me to be able to this, I have to shift my vibration. And this is the thing around manifestation that people forget, right? The first is the desire, but we throw those out all the time. I want more of this, or I'd like that, or I don't like that, which helps me realize what I do want. Desire is easy. We live it every day. But it's how do I gain enough momentum in that higher feeling place, that vibration, that good vibration, so that I can beam like a lighthouse, which is you're that point of attraction, so that the universe will bring me those things that match that energy. When we're in a low place, it's that whole thing. If you are having a shitty day, I can guarantee you it's going to get shittier until you decide to flip that switch, right? And that's why we have all these sayings of like, you can start your day at any time. Yeah, and then there's times in your life you're going to be like, well, I'm not going to do it. And that's okay too, because by the end of the day, you'll realize, had I just made a little switch, maybe I wouldn't have put so much momentum into this emotion that then catapulted into this gigantic problem that could have just been shifted had I made like one little pause to just think,
So is that, can you offer some tips or tactics on how to shift if you're having a shitty day?
Yes.
And, how to get your mindset where it needs to be? What do you do?
Yep. Do things to feel good. That is your priority. Your number one priority is to get yourself in a place that feels good. Whether that's take a walk, call a friend, listen to some music, go outside, take some deep breaths, walk out. I don't know. If your day and you can say, you know what, today's just not going my way. I'm done for the day. Turn around. Sometimes I'll do that. I'll be like, yep, no, we'll try again tomorrow. But it's that idea of interrupting it before it gains momentum, because in energy work, any thought or feeling is going to emanate a vibration, a vibe. You get 17 seconds before it starts to catch momentum. So if you can catch yourself before 17 seconds, then you haven't put a lot of fuel in it. It's going to slow down a lot easier. It's kind of like a real heavy truck, right? It's going to start to take off, but if we don't feed it any more gas, it's going to slow down, stop. But if we keep on fueling it for days or months or weeks or years or lifetimes, then you got a really fast moving truck that's going to take a long time to slow down. But if you can start fueling a new truck, the one that you actually want to propel and gain momentum, then this one will slow down and eventually that one will shift.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about you right now and what you do and how you help people. You have a coaching practice, I guess. Is that what you call it? Or?
Sure.
Yeah. And literally, you've turned what you've learned to help yourself into something now that you can use to help other people.
Yes.
Talk to us a little bit about how you're doing
Sure.
that.
Yeah. So I do a couple different things. One, I have my master's in spiritual care, so I offer soul coaching, and then I have my crystal bed energy healing certificate. So I do crystal bed work, and then I read tarot and oracle cards as well. And I am a psychic medium. So a lot of my life is in training for that, which is a lot of silence. I was telling you earlier, it's like psychics, we overdevelop our senses by depleting outside distractions. So there are hours a day that I'm in complete silence, like no TV, no radio, nothing on in the background. A lot of times I'll sit outside, but it's this over-training of your senses in the sense of, have you ever tried to concentrate on what you can hear for any extended amount of time? Try it for 5 minutes, try it for 10 minutes, try it for an hour. And the ability to hear, you start to pick up things that when you're just speeding by, you miss. Same thing with sight, smell, taste, all of it. So we overdevelop those senses so that when we sit with people in their energy within 6 feet, you had asked me that earlier, I think the idea of a person's quantum field extends 6 feet out. One of the quantum forces from the heart space, one from the crown. So you have the 6 feet here, 6 feet here. So if anyone is in your 6 feet range, you are now in an energetic exchange with them. You can pick up their vibration. You can even, and this is what I love about frequency and healing work, is when you start to shift your vibration out of those negative shame, resentment, angry, frustrated, anxious cycles, and you emanate in that higher frequency for longer periods of time, what happens when you go into a dark room and flip on the light? What happens to the dark?
Goes away.
Disappears.
Yeah.
So in frequency work with humans, if I can resonate in that very high energy and spend a certain amount of time with someone, which is in my coaching, right? Someone who might be in a darker place, that energetic shift happens where not once has someone left and been like, oh, I feel so much better all the time. That's every single time, because that's how energy and frequency works. That's why self-care and you prioritizing yourself is the most important best gift you can give to anyone, because everyone says like, oh, that's selfish. No, it's not, because if you are depleting yourself and showing up inauthentically, showing up not who you are, showing up in your irritability and your frustration and your shame because you haven't done that healing work or taken care of yourself, you're not presenting to anyone in your life, let alone you, who you really are, or an honest expression of who you really are. This is the depleted you.
Yeah.
You know?
My dad used to tell me that growing up. He would always say, if you're no good for yourself, you can't be good for anybody else. Same thing, when you get on the airplane and they go through and do all the safety
Yep.
stuff, whose oxygen mask do you put on first?
I used to be a flight attendant, so I could help you with that.
Were you? Is there anything you haven't done?
Right?
My gosh, wow. Let me
Taught
guess.
high school, was a flight attendant, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, that is
Fun life.
amazing. So this is not a formal education, or is it a formal education process that you went through, or
Yeah.
did you? I mean, how did you find all this information out? Where does somebody, if somebody wants to learn more about this, obviously we'd like to share your contact information.
Yes, of course.
Here, but in fact, let's go ahead and do that. We can do it again before we hop here.
Mm-hmm.
If somebody did want to reach out to you after watching the show today, what's the best way to reach you?
Sure. On Instagram, I'm at Noel the Good Witch. I have a website. It's www.noelkoenke.com, which is NoelKoenke.com. Those are probably the best ways to reach out to me. nkspiritualcare@gmail.com too, if you want to email me directly.
nkspiritualcare@gmail.com.
That's
Okay.
correct.
For somebody who just wanted to kind of put their finger in the water and just take the temperature, do you have any good reads, anything you would recommend?
Yes. So one of the first books I read when I was kind of getting into this work was Tasha Silver's Outrageous Openness. It's a great book. It's an easy read, very short chapters, but it just helps us maybe think that there could be another way to see a situation. So one of my favorite examples with her is, she used to get so pissed off when she would miss an exit. And I would always too. I'm like, oh my God, now I'm going to be late. All that negative energy, right? But there have been so many times now that I've been aware of it that had I not had that missed turn or missed exit, there's been an accident maybe just the right amount of time up the road. And do I have to know for certain if that was going to be the accident and it could have been in? No, it doesn't matter. That puts me in a better feeling place. It takes me out of the anger or the frustration, and it puts me in a place of gratitude, and it puts me in a place of resonance, authenticity. That feels so much better. It's like my whole body just goes, that calm, that peace. That's how we know. We can start to sense, like I always said, it's like playing this game of hot or cold. Like when you used to hide things as a kid and you get closer to it, they're like, you're getting warmer, or colder if you're moving away. That's how you can navigate your intuition and your authentic self, is when you're in a situation, when you're doing something. Like right now, I'm having so much fun. I'm loving it. Like I am in my resonance. It's awesome. Now, if I were like, then I'd be like, no, this might not be for you. So now I have some information. But that's how we can navigate, our most authentic selves. But that would be the first book. And then Gabrielle Bernstein, she's another great writer. She wrote The Universe Has Your Back, Super Attractor. She's very much into law of attraction, manifestation. We both follow Esther Hicks, who's Abraham Hicks. She's another big metaphysical law of attraction teacher. Florence Scovel-Shinn is a master metaphysician. She has a lot of books out as well. She's passed, but she's got wonderful, wonderful work. So those would be the three I'd say to start to look into.
Right. Wow. And as far as your practice goes,
Yes.
how do people work with you? What's the engagement process? How long do you typically work with people? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so each session, so I do in-person sessions and I do virtual soul coaching, like oracle card or tarot reading sessions. But most of my clients are in person. And so we have about 30 to 45 minutes of soul coaching. And so that's where I really help. That's where I do a lot of the psychic reading. It's like I'll watch for how their body moves or their breath or their eyes or how their voice changes if they're talking about something, because a lot of times people aren't aware of how their voices change or their bodies. And how can they see it? They can't see it. You know,
Right.
you're in your body, right? So what I do is I watch for all of those things so that the body and the senses can tell me what the soul is trying to communicate to them. I always will take notes. There'll be certain words I'll write down. And it's so funny because so many of my clients are like, how did you know that was like what was holding me back? I was like, I've known since session 1, but I had to wait to get there with you. You know, we'll gradually get there. But it's like when you catch enough of the same words or the same patterns, and that's right brain development, pattern
Patterns,
recognition.
yeah.
So that's really a lot of what psychics do, is we're looking for these patterns, but using all of our senses to do it. And so that we have the coaching, then I put them on the crystal bed, and that's where I cleared the energy space. We call in their spirit guides. The crystal bed itself is an electrical device that has 7 clear quartz crystals. They hang over each chakra, and they're cut in a Vogel certified cut. So he was a physicist that found a 12-sided cut crystal, when light beams into it, will reflect with the power of a laser. And so it's the carrier of the information that carries the color to the chakra and helps bring it back into its frequency. So they are actually doing an energetic alignment with 3D sound frequency therapy as well, which stimulates right left brain at the same time. It's very similar to like an EMDR style for trauma. So it helps to alleviate that. It helps people to slow rapid thought. That's a big reason people can't meditate, they say. So they have that for 30 minutes, and then we finish with an oracle card draw. So just to give them some inspiration for the next week.
I think I know what those are. Yeah, you pull a
Yes.
card out of the stack, and yeah.
Yes, and
Okay.
every deck, different topics. You
Yeah.
know, it's just guidance
Yeah.
based.
Yeah.
But yeah, so they're about 90-minute sessions, and then I have clients on membership, so they come 1 or twice a month, and then I have package deals and all that too. So, but that's
Okay.
generally how I work with people.
Okay. And I can't believe this has gone so fast. It's really
Yeah.
Oh, is it
incredible.
almost over?
Yeah. I do have one more question I'd like to ask,
Yes.
though. It's been said that 90% of a person's character is developed by the time they're like 7 or 8 years old. What about the problems that adults deal with? Does that generally, can you go back to some point in their childhood and find a trauma that they experienced and help them refile that trauma
Yes.
so that they can then move forward? Is that something that is
Yes.
part of your work?
Yeah, so inevitably and not every session, but whenever a session, a person starts to talk about a childhood experience, I will guide them in how old were you at that point, you know? And then what we'll do is on the crystal bed, I'll help them visualize her, and then give them guidance on how to go into that scene, but becoming their own hero. So, for example, a woman, I had a client who always believed she was impulsive. It was something that her dad had told her since she was young, and this woman was anything but impulsive from what I saw and experienced, but had this belief system that she was. And so we went back to that moment. I had her, watch the scene go down where her dad was screaming at her, calling her impulsive for leaving a job that was not treating her well. And then follow herself to her bedroom to have a talk and say, this was the best decision you made. I'm here in present day coming to let you know that I think you're really brave, that the choice you made to honor yourself is awesome, and I'm going to come back with you, and we're going to go talk to dad together. And so they went back in her vision down, and then she was able to step in and be that hero to protect her younger self. And that whole scene revisioned for her. She says now she can't even think about impulsive without thinking about how it was part of that healing process within herself. And that now, instead of saying that to herself, she has this very integrated sense of, I make great decisions, and I might take some time to think them through, or I might make them because there's this sense that something's really violating to me, and that's good, and so it's just reprogramming it. But that's what allowed her to leave her job and start her own practice and do her own thing. And she's, just, it's so cool. I think that's the best part, is seeing how quick this work can catapult people into places that they never even believed possible. So
Yeah. That is super
Wild.
exciting.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, it's not, to be able to condense the process down to a time frame,
mm-hmm.
because people's attention these days is so short, and to be able to get results that quick is incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah. There are going to be a lot of kids in the pipeline, unfortunately,
Yeah.
because of the way that, we talked about this at lunch.
Mm-hmm.
That's subject for another show, but
Well, and I can tell you my fastest growing clientele base right now are in their 20s.
Yeah.
And they're actually the quickest turnarounds because their programming hasn't rooted as deeply. So I have clients all the way up to 68, but that takes longer because think about how many experiences and different things you've had that's rooted that system deeply into your belief,
oh
right?
gosh, yeah.
When you're in your 20s, it's like pulling up a light weed, not a
Right, not a
deep
tree.
one. Yeah, right? Yeah, exactly.
That is wild. Wow. Well, C3, I'm telling you, man.
Yeah. Noel, one last thing.
Yes.
What's one piece of advice you want to leave our audience with at the end of this show here?
To go do something good for yourself today. That's what I always tell my clients. It's focus on what feels good for you. If something doesn't feel good, that is your intuition trying to get your attention that this is not in alignment for you.
Yeah.
Now there might be things that you still, want or force yourself to do. I'm not a huge advocate of that, but feeling good. Find that feel good feeling and learn to feel again, because
Right.
that's what makes, you can't numb out or distract yourself from pain. You can, but then you don't get to feel any joy.
True.
Yeah.
You don't get to choose what you numb.
Yeah. Being addicted to drugs is not the answer.
Being
Yeah.
in control is a lot better.
Yeah. Well, Noel, thank you for being here today. One more time, what's your email address for anybody? It's
nkspiritualcare@gmail.com.
okay,
All
and then
one word.
also Noel the Good Witch.
Yes, at Noel the
Instagram.
Good Witch for
Yeah.
Instagram and TikTok.
Oh, amazing. Great. Well, I'm just super excited that we were able to get you on the show. I know you
Same.
keep a busy schedule. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you guys for watching. Give Noel a shout out. And, if you've got anything on your heart that came up while you were watching this today, she'd love to speak with you.
Yes.
So, all right, guys. Well, we're going to call it a wrap. Travis, thank you for giving us a soft landing today. We appreciate that.
How about them Cowboys today?
How about them Cowboys today? That's right. Later tonight, we got them coming up.
Yes, indeed.
They're going to the Super Bowl, right?
Ooh, I don't want to count my eggs before they hatch.
I think that's what Tony Romo said last week. All right. Well, guys, thank you very much for being with us today. Check back with us next week. We'll have another great episode of Cliff's Notes. Check back then. Thank you. So tune in every Thursday where we'll give you the tips, tricks, and tactics to explode your business. I guarantee it.